is a customer experience company that offers a way and a model to digitally connect with your customers. And this morning, depending on where you are, we are very, very lucky to have Peter Njonjo with us. Peter also is, I would say, a customer of Ajua as Twiga Foods. And we are quite happy to have him with us this morning to be able to share with us a couple of insights. So without much further ado, then I will just hand over to Peter. Peter is a CEO, co-founder as well of Twiga Foods. He's had a very, very checkered career in the corporate sector, and now is settled to run his own firm, Twiga Foods, and basically transforming the digital supply chain, especially in agriculture, not just in Kenya, but as a model for the rest of Africa and emerging markets. So Peter, over to you, please. And we'll go through Peter's presentation, and I would urge you all to use the box down there on the Q&A. Do not forget your questions, put them in as Peter speaks. We will attempt at the very end to try and answer as many questions as possible on a fast in, fast answered. Thank you. Over to you, Peter.
No, thank you so much, Gilbert. And I'll start also by quickly introducing myself and giving a brief background. I'm Kenyan, married with 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls. I'm also a certified public accountant, did my schooling in Kenya, and then joined the Coca-Cola company. I worked there for 21 years. For 6 years, I managed the Coca-Cola business on the east coast of Africa. That's about 6 countries, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Mozambique. And then in the later part of my career, I was president for West and Central Africa. I did that for 3 years. And I was managing about 31 countries across sub-Saharan Africa. So directly manage about 40 countries. So I have a good understanding of the retail landscape on the continent. And I co-founded Twiga 6 years ago, while still working in Coca-Cola. So my side hustle then has become my main hustle. So I joined Twiga on a full-time basis in April of last year, and I've been leading the company ever since. So and I think the key thing around today's presentation is to give you a brief overview of what it is that we do as a company, how we're using technology to solve the problems that we see or are faced by our constituents in the market that we operate in, which for now is Nairobi. A quick overview of Twiga. What do we view our purpose? Because it is very important to always be grounded in our purpose. What is the reason why we exist? And the reason why we exist is to improve access to lower cost, higher quality food across African cities. So as it stands today, we've grown to 1,000 employees. We serve 6,000 retailers every day. And we source our produce from 15,000 farmers, but also now we're doing also both distribution of processed food together with fresh food. The reason why we started doing processed food is because you go to a kiosk, and as you're delivering bananas, as you're delivering potatoes, they also ask you, you know what, since you're here, can you give us maize flour, wheat flour? Can you bring me some sugar? So what we've done is that we've extended the portfolio that we have to ensure that we can better meet the needs of our customers. But I'm going to share that a little bit with you as we move along. So what problem are we trying to solve? This is a $300 billion problem across sub-Saharan Africa. The reason why this is a big deal is because consumers are spending a significant amount of money on food. In Kenya, 55% of disposable income, based on World Bank data, going to food. Average is 44% in sub-Saharan Africa. If you put South Africa at 16%. Now, the key thing is that, you know, why are other countries spending such a low amount of their disposable income on food while we're spending a significant amount? You know, just as an interest, just out of interest, the United States, consumers were spending 52% of their disposable income in the 1870s. So that's 150 years ago. So, and why is it that we're spending that amount of money on food? So the key thing is that, one is food is essentially produced by smallholder farmers, about 70% of it. So a lot of this is informal. The agronomy practices are also not what I'd call very productive. And the yield is very, very low, which is then is also accompanied by a very, very high level of post-harvest losses. Between the farm and retail, about 30 to 40% of food is lost just due to poor handling. So when you put all that together, it starts highlighting that there is a problem in terms of how we produce our food. If you look at markets like South Africa, a lot of food is actually produced by commercial farms. And that allows for very, very efficient, low-cost type of production. And there is a role that we can play around empowering smallholder farmers. But the thing is that we need to move away from the narrative of small farms to large farms. And essentially, you can have lots of smallholders come together and create a large farm. And that allows us for better run, better capitalized farms when it comes to food production. The other thing is that, that I will highlight is that at the core of this problem is around fragmentation of retail. And I'll come back to the farming bit in a short while. So if you assume Nairobi has maybe, and when I talk about 6.5 million people, I'm talking about the larger metropolis. So this takes into account places like maybe Machakos, Athi River, Thika, Kiambu, because all those places are more or less linked to the Nairobi value chain. So when you think about it, that's 180,000 retailers serving 6.5 million people. That's 276 shops for every 10,000 people. So when you have this level of informality or this amount of fragmentation, the key question here is, if you're a large commercial farmer, who are you selling your product to? Because that means that the only way you can sell is by going and hawking the product across different channels. And because of that level of informality, it makes it very difficult for people to actually invest in large commercial farms. So when you have that situation, what you've seen in the country today, you've seen in Kenya today, is that a lot of the commercial farmers are export-oriented. And the reason why they're export-oriented, because they can get a large purchase order from a large supermarket out there in Europe. So it makes it easier for them to even access financing. So if you look at, for example, the commercial banks in Kenya, about 2% of their balance sheet is dedicated towards agriculture. Within that 2%, bulk of that is actually export-oriented agriculture. We talk about agriculture being 30% of GDP. So it means that, there's a significant part of our GDP that goes unfunded in terms of capacity expansion or even formalizing of the types of practices that we have in there. What you find is that because of informality on farming, our farmers don't have access to high quality planting material. They don't have access to irrigation. They don't have access to even the agronomy talent that helps them manage the productivity on those farms. And if you look at it from a government standpoint, again, government spend right now sits at about maybe between 3.5% and 3.8% of government expenditure going to agriculture. A lot of that is actually subsidies that is going towards grain producing farmers in the form of seed or fertilizer. So when you think about it, bulk of our production goes unfunded. And the reason why it goes unfunded is because the informality in that value chain does not lend itself to financing. So when you have that informality, then there's low yield, there's low productivity, high wastage, and then when you have a fragmented market, it just makes it very, very difficult for a country like Kenya to be self-sufficient in food production unless we start thinking about some structural changes that we need to drive to ensure that we bring some formality in the industry that allows capital to flow and start solving some of the problems that we have in food. And if we're spending 55% before COVID, now with the disruption of income, there's actually, it actually has made it worse. So People who were having 3 meals a day in some places have had to cut down 1 meal. People who are having 2 meals a day have cut 1 meal. Because if you're having an average of 55%, it means that there's people who are sitting on 70%, there are people who are sitting at 5%, more the wealthier part of Kenyans. Now, if 70 gets moved to 75, that person essentially is struggling to survive. And a lot of this is actually happening in the urban cities. So how do we think about ourselves as Twiga in terms of addressing these needs? So first thing is that we have to more or less zero in on what pain points are we solving, what raw need are we solving with our customers. Our customers is the mamambogas, the kiosks, and the dukas. And that's informal retailers. The key thing is that they lack affordable and quality produce, because when you have that level of fragmentation, there isn't at times very reliable supply coming through on a day-to-day basis. And the key thing is that, you then need also a lot of working capital as a retailer, because you're having a low frequency of service from the wholesale market. If a wholesalers will come to you once or twice a week, it means that then you need to really stock up your shop to ensure that you always have product for your end customer. So for us, that's the raw need that we are seeing in the market. How are we using technology to streamline the process, where we move to cashless payment, and this is essentially reducing the transaction costs of handling cash. The second thing also is around post-harvest losses. You remember when I say that there's a big issue around the amount of product that gets lost in the market because of poor handling. So just by improving our logistics and operations, we've actually cut down the post-harvest loss by 70% without any refrigeration. And a lot of this has come from investments that we've had to make, for example, in using crates. How do you ensure that you use crates from the farm all the way to the customer, and reducing the mechanical damage of product while it's in transit from farms to retail? Of course, we have a high level of service frequency. We visit our retailers every day. So that allows them to reduce their working capital requirements and essentially just stock the product that they need for the day. And the other thing around our disruptive model is that we want to reduce the price of food for the urban consumers. And this is at the heart of our business model. And the other thing also is that I want to reduce the food waste, which is essentially an environmental benefit to that. So when you think about it, we want to be sustainable to the world around us. And that's a key component of what it is that we do as Twiga. Because when you think about, we have values that we've internalized as a company. And our values are anchored on 3 key principles. One is that we own our work. When you think about everything that we need to do with the informal retailers, with farmers, we own that piece, and we're willing to do whatever it takes to ensure that we can then empower our stakeholders from that perspective. The second thing that we do is that we try to keep it simple. Simplicity is really important. We're solving a complex problem, but we need to be very simple in terms of how we think about it, because then that allows the different stakeholders that we have to understand what it is that we're trying to do and how we're solving that problem. And the third piece, which is very important, is that we consider ourselves to be good guys. So sustainability then for us then becomes very, very important. The other thing is that we also want to shift the ecosystem. So we have a mobile-based B2B food supply platform, which is critical. We're driving a lot of disintermediation, which means that where you have a lot of fragmentation that is creating high cost, we want to disintermediate that value chain and ensure that there are fewer players on that value chain. The way we want to look at it is there's a farmer, there's ourselves, and then there's a retailer. And what we do is that we then provide the service of matching the farmer to the retailer and providing the logistics solution in between, which I think is a big problem. And then, of course, we will take advantage of any adjacent opportunities to distribute non-food products. What you find is that as you start serving the retailers, maybe tomorrow they want toothpaste, The next day they will want some paracetamol. So the key thing for us is that we'll continue expanding our offering to ensure that we can meet the needs of our retailers, because our primary focus is how do we then become the kiosk's trusted business partner? And that for us is our key objective. And then, of course, we will have all the new competitors in terms of how we're thinking of ourselves. As I mentioned, I want to become a one-stop shop for all the vendor needs. This presentation is a bit outdated. Right now, as a Twiga, we are close to approaching 500 SKUs that we are carrying, and ensuring that we can better meet the needs of kiosk. And then the key thing is that the way we use data. So again, a lot of supply chain optimization and value-added services coming through from the way we're leveraging data, and I will share a little bit about that. Because at the end of the day, what makes this whole ecosystem work is how we're leveraging data and analytics. And this then will then drive the future direction of the industry. So the key thing is that as a business, we understand where to play and how to win. In terms of where to play, we really focus on what we call high velocity goods to justify the logistics. So if you look at it, you know, we focus on products that actually are required on the Kenyan consumer table on a daily basis. Our big movers are bananas, potatoes, watermelons, tomatoes, onions, and essentially these are products that you find on the Kenyan table on a day-to-day basis. When you look at things like the processed foods, it's things like maize flour, wheat flour, sugar, cooking oil. Again, things that are being used in the Kenyan home on a day-to-day basis, because if we then focus on reducing price on those elements, then we also have an impact in reducing the amount of money Kenyans are spending on food. Then, of course, there's who do we target? So the key thing is that we focus on small informal vendors, and the key thing is that, you know, we're looking at high volume, low service requirement, and again, really building our frequency around that. The reason why we say high volume, low service requirement, you know, for a kiosk, you really don't have requirements. You know, I send you a pro forma invoice. From a pro forma invoice, I will then need to give you an invoice, and from there, I will pay you after 30 days. Those are high service requirements, and the key thing is that, you know, that's why you find that, you know, we try to shy away from business with more formal retailers like supermarkets. So we prefer working with kiosks, because all you have to do is show up every day, your price is good, and you transact in cash. So, and again, that for us allows us to serve many more retailers. As I mentioned today, we have about 6,000 retailers. Hopefully by the end of this year, over 10,000 retailers every day. So again, that is essentially our objective in terms of how we're seeing the growth of the business, and also doing this across multiple cities. And the key point is that, you know, we're clear about the need. So, and we like the so this marketing objectives, power. So those are the types of labels that really make sense for us, because it makes it easy to serve customers, because they're all in one light and heavily clustered. Again, that for us is a strong point. And the thing is that we also understand how to win. So we don't see ourselves as a distributor. So we're creating capabilities that allow us to be an alternative market to formalize the informal retail. So we're clear about the capabilities that we need to build. We are also clear about the operating capabilities that we need to build. And we're also clear about the proprietary assets that we need to build. And essentially, this stretches from back office to customer facing. So what do we then need to do, for example, with the retailers out there? you find that some mama mbogas are very tech savvy. They can use apps. So we want to provide them apps. Some are not tech savvy. So we have a call center solution for them. Some prefer seeing a person every day. So we have sales reps out there who have an app that they can engage with the mama, but she can tell the sales rep what she wants, and essentially we deliver that within 24 hours. So this is essentially how we see ourselves as a company. And the thing is that we've created a end-to-end logistic system. So we bought some with say farmers from production. We have with farmers in another few months or weeks, we should also be a significant fund that we have negotiated to drive financing. So for us, is a very, very important in working the financing. You're right about 2% of financing actually, or 2% of financing in the country is actually going to the whole farm production. So local farmers access with the farmers in terms of farmer production, and then buy it.
Peter, there's
Yes.
there's a bit of a breakage on your side.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me well now?
Oh, now it's better.
That's
interesting. Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that. Perfect. So the thing is, that just to highlight again, so there's a pre-production, farm production, and then there's how we so we try to do this. We pay farmers this is the program that we have to engage. You know, we have an app. You know, is how does the product move from which it needs to be.
It's breaking again. Breaking again. It's just the audio.
Sorry.
The video is perfect. The audio is breaking. So.
Okay.
But then when we speak,
all
it's
right.
clear. So that's interesting. Zoom.
Yeah. Okay. Just if you can't hear me, just let me know. Then
I will. I'll keep my side on now, so that yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Just wave or something if you can't hear me.
I'll do that. Okay.
So the key thing is that it's one thing to talk about doing an app for farmers, but one thing that a lot of people also don't take into account is how you move this from farms to where it's required. So again, we talk about transportation, about aggregation, and then essentially what we call primary processing. And for us, it isn't processing per se. It's aggregating the product, putting it in the required sizes. The reason why I say that is, for example, if you take large onions to Kayole, the market will not buy that, because the key thing is that I need to sell the onions maybe at a certain amount, and consumers need to be able to afford that. So what you find is that sending large onions to Kayole, you have an issue around market fit, and they will reject the product, saying that, look, I can't make money off this with the type of customer that I have. So if you have large onions, you need to send that to South B or South C or to next. But your consumer actually prefers larger product, which makes it easier to then sell. So again, it's also understanding the different nuances across the market and ensuring that we're able to sort that out. And of course, taking this to the end market. An end market here, essentially, you have to then provide the security of supply, because one thing that I want to understand is that I need to be here every day. Can I rely on you to provide for my family? So are you going to have low prices? So all those things are very, very critical, because at the end of the day, even as you're sourcing from the farmer, you have to provide sale agreements to the market, because the they don't come with the same product. And the thing is, you don't need to provide for their family, and that's a big issue. And those are the things that we need to then start thinking about from the creation of this end-to-end ecosystem. So what kind of framework do we have in terms of thinking about our business model? How does this all come together? So for us, we have to have the lowest quality market, because as I mentioned, we're already spending 55% of our distribution of our disposable income on food. So cost is at the center of everything that we do. We have the lowest cost period. So in terms of lowest cost sourcing, we want to start working with farmers and help farmers become more efficient and more productive. Because when farmers are more efficient and more productive, they can then sell produce to us at a lower cost. Let me just give you an example. When we've worked with some potato farmers, by giving them high quality planting material, ensuring that they're using fertilizers and they have an irrigation system, on an annual basis, those farmers are having a 3 to 4x yield differential to the smallholder farmer. So because the smallholder farmer, they maybe have one season, they all send the product to the market at the same time, and product prices collapse. Just to give you an example, when the Nyandarua Kinangop potato farmers produce product, because it's rain-fed, it all comes into the market at the same time. Potato prices at times in the wholesale market collapse to even 10 shillings a kilo. Today in the market, the potato prices are 40 shillings a kilo. That's 4x. When it's 4x, when the potato prices cross 30 shillings a kilo, it becomes viable to buy potatoes from Tanzania and shipping that product from Mbeya, Iringa, which is in the southern part of Tanzania, 1,200 kilometers, and still getting to Kenya at a competitive price. So that shows you the opportunity that lies in terms of having a low-cost infrastructure in terms of potato production, but it being irrigation fed. Because today it rains when it's supposed not when it rains when it's not supposed to rain, and when it's supposed to rain, it doesn't rain. So if you can't plan based on rain-fed agriculture, the only solution is to move to irrigation, so that when it's raining, then you don't need to irrigate. When it's not raining, you irrigate, but you continue producing. So that's very important to us. Then the second piece that's really critical in terms of lowest cost is the cost of a last mile. It's very expensive to distribute product all the way to the kiosk. So again, we've started leveraging a lot of advanced analytics in terms of our routing. So actually our first use case of artificial intelligence is in this last mile. So what happens is that now orders come in, we're able to calculate, the customers who ordered, how close are they to each other? What did they order? What's the weight of what they ordered? What's the volume of what they ordered? What's the state of a road outside of that particular customer? What's the state of traffic to distribute to that particular customer? And we can then create dynamic routes that allow us to then have the lowest cost distribution to the kiosk owner. And then of course there's a efficient material handling. As I mentioned, we've taken out 70% of our cost of post-harvest losses. And then of course there's value-added services, because we have very unique data on all our customers. We've started offering them fintech products like trade credit. You can take product today, you can pay us back in 7 days because we know you're good for credit. And we have the data that informs us that you are. So we start providing other services on top of just normal selling of goods. And then because we're working with larger farmers more and more, we can now get food safety certification. So, I know that everybody's concerned, the skuma wikis I ate last night, where did they come from? How are they grown? So, and we want to start addressing a lot of that in terms of certification and food safety. And then of course there's convenience, the short delivery times, being consistent. And right now, mobile commerce, everything is fully integrated on the phone. So whether you're sourcing product, you're distributing product, everything now is available on our platform. So, and for us, the key enablers is technology. All this will not happen without technology. Again, fully integrated. But again, technology here is an enabler, not a means to an end. Because whenever you hear about technology in some of these conversations, it really needs to be solving a problem. The other piece that's really important is around people. If we do not have the right talent, all this would not be possible. So when you consider our employee engagement, global high-performing norms, which is how we benchmark ourselves, high-performing norms for engagement is about 87% globally. We're 3% higher than that, which means that for us, we really have an engaged workforce who are really committed to the problem that we're trying to solve. And of course, we also measure a lot of our culture. And as I mentioned, our values, we own our work, we keep it simple, and we're good guys. So the way we see it is we have an opportunity to streamline food distribution in the cities that we operate. By 2030, this will be a $1 trillion opportunity across sub-Saharan Africa. And for us, we have a very, very simple model. It's about lowering food prices. If we lower food prices, that has a huge impact on customer service, because that's what essentially retailers are looking for. And if you have higher customer service, that will attract more retailers. And once you have more retailers, it allows you to build more efficient suppliers, which again helps you have lower pricing. And this is a virtuous cycle that we're building as a company, and hopefully we can then roll this out to more cities across the continent. So, so that is it in terms of the presentation that I had to share, and I wanted to then open it up to questions and answers, because then I think that allows us to have more time for conversation. Over to you, Gilbert.
Thank you very much, Peter. Really appreciate it. And attendees, please just put your questions in the Q&A. I want to kick off by asking specifically about COVID, right? So you've mentioned a couple of things there that are quite important during this COVID pandemic time, because of one thing that really drives your company ethos and actually you stand for, which is lowering prices, right? Lowering costs. You are already doing that. You brought down prices to levels that had not been seen on the streets, especially in the urban areas. And also availability as well, and consistency of fresh produce. Now, in these environments where we've got the whole COVID pandemic challenges, including the social distance, but also the government enforced lockdowns, how are you maintaining that level of cost reduction? But also, how are you maintaining, logistically speaking, the promise of we are there with the right price, but also the right quantities and freshness? Because some of the media reports we're seeing is saying that there's a bit of a food price inflation caused by the social lockdowns that's going on. So, what are you seeing that, and if you are, what are the interventions you've got to do to continue to maintain your promise of those three items?
So the first thing that we've done is that we very, very early on in this process, we got passes from the Agriculture Food Authority, being an essential services provider that allowed us free movement in the country. So we've maintained pretty much our supply chains have not been disrupted into the city. Second thing is that, we already had a significant number of farmers who were already contracted to us. So we're still able to move produce to them. The third piece is, and this is essentially around the movement within the city. One of the things is that we were very, very diligent with, for example, the safety of our staff, because the key thing is that, our staff are very, very critical. They're frontline, and we have to ensure that they feel protected. So one of the things that we did is that even before it became mandatory, all of them have PPE protection. They all have face masks. In all our distribution vehicles, we have hand sanitizer, which we encourage the usage of. And the other thing also is that even for the crates that handle the food produce, we have a very, very stringent disinfection process to ensure that, by the time a crate that comes from the market, by the time it's getting food loaded onto it and getting back to the market, there's a disinfection process that we have for that particular crate. So we thought about all the risks that we could encounter across our whole supply chain and ensure that we mitigated most of those risks. So I would say that even with COVID, our ability to deliver our promise to our customers has remained significantly intact.
Thanks. And I'm glad personally to hear about your disinfection process, because you have a new product in Jumia, which literally delivers the beautiful pack with beautiful stuff inside really quickly. And, we trust that we don't have to do again, 2 times over complete end-to-end disinfection of what arrives. So that's great to know that you at least, make an attempt at that. So the other question was from Monica, and you mentioned something about your staff safety. She's asking, how do you keep your staff engaged? First, how many staff do you have, and how do you tier them? And do you have contractors as well? And then how do you keep them engaged in the businesses, especially right now?
So we have 1,000 staff. So and the 1,000, half are contracted, half are contractual, and half are permanent. And the key thing for us is we look at engagement at different levels. First of all, in terms of safety, we've provided the PPEs across the whole ecosystem. But more than that, what has really helped us is what I'd call over-communication. When we had our first incident of COVID in Kenya, which was on the 12th of March, I think the health ministry announced this on the 13th of March. After that, we started having town hall meetings twice a week. And these were virtual town hall meetings. And a lot of our staff members could actually log in and participate in the town hall meetings remotely using their phones. So we did that twice a week. In the earlier part of our town hall meetings, we really focused around the disease and the epidemiology around the disease. So we got a lot of medical experts to come and talk to us, to also share with us things that we need to think about as a food company, and how we ensure that we can have the safety of a staff come forth or become the central part of everything that we do. The second thing that we focused on in our town hall meetings is around the mental health piece. Because you see, the thing is that with COVID, yes, it's a disease, but the changes that we're seeing in how people live, how people work. So for example, the people whom were living with their parents. So when you live with your parents and you have young children, then it means that the parents are very, very exposed from an infection standpoint. So again, some of the parents had to go back up country. Maybe they don't have the level of care that they would have received from their children here in Nairobi. All those things create significant stress, because it's not just about the financial side of it, saying that actually I'm going to get my parents' medical cover. It's more than that, it's about that peace of mind. So there was a significant issue around mental health that we started identifying with our staff. So again, we started arranging for counseling services that were on demand, put out a hotline where they could actually access all these services. We started having town hall meetings with motivational speakers that actually helped people think through their situations, and that was very, very impactful. And then the third piece that we then moved to was to then say, okay, fine, there's this piece around COVID, but then there's also going to be financial planning. How do we help people start thinking about the financial planning of their resources during this period? You know, is this the period to be buying a plot of land and trying to build apartments for rent? Or should you be conserving cash? So again, helping people work through their financial planning, and that again help people get to that state of mind. Now, with all this in place, then I think the key thing here is to ensure that everybody aligned with our purpose. You know, why are we doing this? Yes, we're an essential services company, we're providing food, but why is this important? And the key thing is that if us in everything that we do help lower the price of food in the communities which we do business, then that creates a higher purpose in our work. And aligning everybody in that higher purpose then becomes very, very critical. And when you have all these things come together, it allows you to have an engaged workforce, even at a time like this.
Peter, I can see very strong Coca-Cola principles in application, you know, especially making sure, yeah, you know, with 1,000 folks, you can keep them really engaged. So that's just amazing that you're able to really impart, you know, really a lot of knowledge that you bring from the corporate sector. This next question is really about your connection to the customer, right? At this time, but generally you've been doing that anyway. And it is also important to see the fact that now you're, as a platform, you're starting to also involve other third parties like Jumia, for example, will do the delivery door to door for the packages that were introduced a couple of weeks ago. Now, what I would think from that challenge is that you start to lose that direct connection with the customer. How do you maintain that connection and make sure you get feedback? Because food is something that is very fleeting. I can today buy an onion from here. If I don't like it, I might not even give feedback. I'll just move somewhere else really quickly. So it's quite fleeting, you know, in decision making where one buys from. So you want to be able to get really regular feedback and know when to make improvements or adjustments, especially if you're at the very top. You want to have those indicators that go all the way down on a daily basis. And how do you maintain that kind of connection from a feedback perspective? But also, how do you maintain your customer service? You know, especially, you know, right now during the pandemic, right, where I'm going to dump the box at your doorstep and take off, right, and you pay somehow digitally. How do you maintain that customer service connection as well?
So the way we see ourselves, as I mentioned, we're a B2B player. So when we're partnering with Jumia, essentially we're looking at Jumia being our customer. And through Jumia, they then are able to offer these products to their customers. So the key thing is that we've not lost that bit around being a B2B player. It's just that in the e-commerce space, there's more visibility to the end consumer. So for example, when you're buying product from that is Twiga oriented, you're not doing that directly to Twiga. So you're doing that through Jumia. So already servicing a customer that was already part of Jumia. Chances are maybe that customer doesn't shop at the local mama mboga. So, but the key thing is that for us, bulk of the market remains the mama mboga and the kiosk space, because that's where 90% of Kenyans shop. You know, and the thing is that at times we do all sorts of market surveys. So for example, you know, there's times where we look at, you know, people throw away receipts after they shop in the supermarket just outside, right? So, and one time we went and decided, what happens if we go analyze those receipts? What are people buying?
Yeah. Okay, that's a different way you want to follow.
And the thing is that what you find is that people don't buy fresh produce from the supermarket. So what you find is that people buy dry goods from the supermarket, and then they continue buying fresh produce from their local mama mboga, where they have a local relationship. So if this is going to be 90% of where people shop, the reality is that that still remains a very, very important channel. And the good thing about our customers in the informal market is if you deliver product that doesn't make sense, you will know immediately. So feedback is immediate and swift. So we never worry about feedback. The key thing is ensuring that we are responsive to the feedback that we are receiving.
Okay, no, that's great to hear. You know, so you mentioned something about making sure that you know, you keep touch with ways you're B2B, but there's also a value in having you know, or a end consumer like myself, knowing that this is Twiga delivered, right? There's brand value in that as well, where we attach that value to that and to the mom and pop, which is beneficial to the mom and pop as well, right? That when I see that Twiga, then I say, this is the right place to go rather than anywhere else, because guess what? There's also kind of things like traceability, disinfection, everything else has already happened. So I trust the brand as well. The next question, I think, is a little bit general. It's going to throw you a little bit off track, but it's just because you seem like you got it all figured out, right? So someone is asking, what current challenges are you facing for which you're yet to find a solution for, right? What's unresolved at this time?
I would say that the key thing is that we've still not figured out how to really meet the needs of our customers, like to have a proper customer market fit. The reason why that is the case is, as affordability starts changing, you will find that the quality of produce required becomes a shifting target. You know, I want large tomatoes today. If my customers are struggling, I want to reduce the size of tomatoes. Now, for us, we can't just switch on and off the size of tomatoes in the farm. It has to be something that is kind of planned for. So what you're finding is that, you know, during this period of COVID, the change in consumer tastes and preferences is very, very rapid. And responding to that actually is a huge challenge to us. So we're trying to build a very agile way of responding to market changes. And what you're finding is that even when it comes to basics like maize flour, you know, maybe somebody was doing very well and they were buying maybe pembe, maize flour, you know, the top grade. And then you still want to continue having ugali, so you want to change now to kifaru because you feel that that would actually meet the needs of your pocket. And as you're having all these dynamic changes happening in different parts of the city, then staying on top of that is a huge challenge. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to figure out how do we then ensure that we are actually really, really focused on ensuring that we are staying close to our customers and meeting all their needs.
Peter, it seems like definitely the corporate sector was launching you into really delivering the promise for Africa on food security, and the SME sector, which is the bulk of where employment really happens and value is created ground up. So really, really I commend you for how you've been able to really, you know, take all those learnings and dive right into it, and especially on the big numbers, for example, right? So looking at, wow, we're looking at 1 trillion. Did you say by 2030, sub-Saharan America, potential capability for streamlining the industry? How are you guiding Twiga through that or to that? You're on mute.
Sorry, my speaker just stopped working.
Oh, okay, it's back on.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So the thing is,
you got the question, right? You got the question.
You can, yeah, I got the question. So what I would say is that the size of the market is $1 trillion by 2030. That's across sub-Saharan Africa. But sub-Saharan Africa is not all the countries. It's actually like 15 cities that you really need to focus on to access about 60% of the opportunity. And the way we're looking at it is that today we're predominantly in Nairobi. We had plans to expand outside of Kenya. COVID had other plans, so we're going to wait until the travel restrictions are lifted for us to start exploring other cities on the continent. But this is a problem pretty much that is replicated across the continent.
Thank you. No, that's almost a personal question for me because of other conversations we had earlier on, because those challenges are still there. We're looking at companies like yourselves really, scaling out there because the challenge across Africa is immense. The average age is not going to go any time higher than what it is right now. It's only going to go lower. And therefore, we have to bring ingenious ways to see how we can be able to arrest that early. The last question I'm going to ask, the previous question asked by Gerald, but I've got one more question before the one I want to close with, and then we ask you for your final remarks. As a B2B, consumers might not have a clue what Twiga does, and consumers rather, might not have a clue what Twiga does. This presentation definitely has been quite useful in demystifying that process that you go through with your B2B. So do you mind, the question is, do you mind putting Twiga food stickers at the purchase points, right? So that brand visibility is just like out there as well, so that end consumers can start to really align with your goals and have that confidence in the purchase they make.
So thank you so much for that question. There's a level of automation that we need to achieve to do that at scale. It's something that definitely we're looking into. We're investing in a new distribution center. And hopefully once a new distribution center is up, these are some of the things that we will put in place so that as people then start buying our produce with the mama mbogas out there, you can then see what has come from Twiga. And it's packed, it's in hygiene packaging, and it starts delivering our promise around higher quality at a lower cost. So which I think is our value proposition. So I would say that that's part of the plans that we're making, and I think by end of year or by early next year, we should have that in place. Looking forward to that, having that Twiga, sticker on an onion. Looking forward to that. Last question. I've seen a lot of digitization in your plans, right? It's right embedded into the core of your business. What, in your view, due to COVID, you've had to accelerate and bring early on, in the development? Because a lot of folks have had to basically do tomorrow now, based on what COVID environment is just presented to everybody else. Is just such a kind of an example within your company that has made you have to make that decision? Well, I think the key thing for us is, when you look at the rate of change that we have seen in the market, it requires some intelligent analytics to help you make better decisions. So I think for us, the whole issue around artificial intelligence was always something in the plan. Yes, we're going to do it one day. But I think, when you have the rate of change that we're seeing in the market, that has actually made us rethink how fast we really need to build that capability. Because as we mentioned, we have this ruthless bias around meeting the needs of our customers. And if the needs of our customers are changing rapidly, then we need to anticipate how those needs are going to change and plan appropriately for them. So I think that for us has been the biggest acceleration that we have seen that essentially has changed the way we work. Thank you. Thank you everyone for your questions. That marks the end of our Q&A session for Ajua Webinars Stay Alive and Thrive series. We are thanking Peter, the CEO and co-founder of Twiga Foods, quite a phenomenon across Africa on the digital supply chain of food and logistics, but making sure that in the end, we're also meeting the promise of Africa, of grow from Africa, but also sustainability perspective. I would just like to give you 1 or 2 minutes, just give your final thoughts, and then we'll close. Thank you. No, I think the key thing is that definitely technology will play a role in our communities, and also solving the problems that we have. And I think the key thing for us is, which is one thing that we've really been passionate about, is how do we then leverage technology to solve the needs of people in the markets and meet them where they are. And that's very important, because the key thing is that, if we're solving the problem of a mamamboga who doesn't have access to a smartphone, then we have to find ways in which we can leverage technology to meet her needs. And I think the key thing for us is that, if we continue thinking about how technology can solve some of these problems, it allows us to leapfrog some of the traditional solutions that we've seen in Western markets. And it allows us to essentially come up with our own solutions to solve our own problems. And that's what really makes me excited about the role of technology, especially at a time like this. And I also want to thank Ajua for putting together this initiative. It allows us to share a little bit more in terms of what it is that we're doing and how this can help accelerate some of the solutions to problems that we face in our markets. And I also want to thank the team that put this together, Gilbert, and everybody else who was involved in this. I think it's a very noble thing, and we need to do more of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Peter. So happy to call you a friend, industry colleague, an industry captain, and congratulations as well on the recent announcement of as one of the top leaders we have in Africa, giving, really, bringing transformation to the continent. So congratulations for that. With that, we want to close now and say thank you all very much. Stay alive, thrive, and let's learn from one another, and looking forward to listening to everyone else, your questions. And thank you for the wonderful questions, Monica, Gerald, and everybody else. Looking forward to them again next time during the next Ajua Webinar series. To all, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.